This video is a monument to the two most powerful forces in the universe: human ego and brutal reality. We've collected 101 stories of Americans who made a bet so unbelievably stupid, the failure was guaranteed from the start. This isn't about losing 20 bucks. This is about losing everything, spectacularly. 1. Some bets are just a permanent tattoo of failure. An arrogantly confident Atlanta Falcons fan bet his friends he could get a Super Bowl LI Champions tattoo a full week before the game. The Falcons then proceeded to blow a 28-3 lead in the most soul-crushing defeat imaginable, leaving him with a lifelong, uneditable monument to his own stupidity. 2. In the dot-com bubble's peak insanity, one San Francisco investor wagered his entire 401k against his buddy's classic Mustang that Pets.com would make him a millionaire. 9 months later, the company was liquidated, the famous sock puppet was retired, and our genius was asking his friend for rides to his new, much less glamorous job. 3. Kevin from Florida, fueled by cheap beer and even cheaper pride, bet his friends he could eat a raw Carolina Reaper pepper without flinching. The prize was $100 and eternal bragging rights. He didn't just flinch, he ended up in the emergency room with a hole burned through his esophagus. His friends used the $100 to buy him get-well flowers. 4. After getting a speeding ticket, a self-proclaimed legal scholar from Arizona bet his friend he could get the charge dismissed by arguing. The gold fringe on the courtroom flag meant it was a maritime court. The judge, wholly unimpressed by his YouTube law degree, not only upheld the ticket, but added a contempt of court charge for wasting everyone's time. 5. A tale as old as Texas. Two buddies, two massive trucks, one immovable tree stump. The wager was catastrophic. Loser sells his Ford F-250 to the winner for $1. Instead of pulling the stump, one guy's truck literally tore itself in half, ripping the frame from the axle. The only thing he won that day was a legendary towing bill. 6. A classic battle of marital ego. A husband in Ohio bet his very pregnant wife he could assemble an entire IKEA bedroom set in under 2 hours without instructions. If he won, their son's name would be Maverick. If he lost, they were getting a golden retriever. 3 hours later, surrounded by splintered particle board, he conceded. The dog's name is Maverick. 7. One Penn State student bet his entire semester's financial aid check that he could down a 30-ounce jar of mayonnaise in under 5 minutes. He managed 3 heroic, gag-inducing spoonfuls before projecting a creamy Vesuvius all over the dorm lounge. He lost the money and any chance of getting a date for the rest of the academic year. 8. A man in Omaha was so sure a predicted hailstorm was media hype that he bet his neighbor he could leave his new convertible's top down overnight and it would be fine. At stake, the neighbor's rusty lawnmower. The next morning, his car's leather interior looked like a Jackson Pollock painting made of dents and despair. The neighbor was seen happily mowing his lawn. 9. In the Louisiana bayou, a fisherman bet his cousin a case of beer he could subdue a 20-pound catfish using only his mouth. The catfish, not interested in the fight, immediately lodged its sharp dorsal fin straight through the man's cheek. The hospital staff later confirmed it was, in fact, the dumbest fishing injury they had ever seen. 10. A man in Portland, Oregon, was so sure his mayoral candidate would win, he bet his neighbor he would legally change his first name to the winner's for a full year if he lost. His guy lost. The winner's name? Balthazar Bumble. For 365 days, he had to introduce himself as Barty Bumble at work, at the bank, and to his very disappointed parents. 11. A Houston man convinced his tuned-up Honda Civic had the heart of a diesel truck bet his neighbor the pink slip to his car that he could tow the neighbor's 24-foot fishing boat off its trailer. The Civic's engine didn't just stall. It made a sound like a grenade full of bolts and then erupted in a plume of oily smoke. 12. A wannabe crypto billionaire in Miami bet his friend $10,000 that Dogecoin was going to replace the US dollar within a year. His friend took the bet. Just a few months later, the coin's value plummeted spectacularly, and our financial visionary had to pay up in good old-fashioned government-issued greenbacks. 13. An aspiring corporate shark in Chicago bet his rivals he could eat an entire ghost pepper pizza and then immediately deliver a flawless presentation for a major promotion. He barely got through his opening slide before projectile vomiting directly onto the conference room's expensive new projector. He did not get the promotion. 14. The suburban rivalry between two dads, obsessed with their perfect lawns, escalated into a wager. They bet on a race with their illegally souped-up riding mowers, with the loser having to wear a French maid costume to the annual block party. One dad, in a moment of sheer genius, added a nitrous oxide booster. It worked for about 5 seconds before launching him and his mower directly through the winner's prize-winning garden hedge and into his inflatable pool. 15. Convinced he was a modern-day MacGyver, a man from rural Pennsylvania bet his skeptical wife he could build a fully functional hot tub using only a cattle trough, a propane torch, and some duct tape. The result was a lukewarm, leaky monstrosity that electrocuted him just enough to make him admit defeat. 16. A flat earther from Kansas made a bet with a commercial pilot for his entire life savings, a cool $50,000. The terms: prove the earth is round. The pilot simply sent him the GPS tracking data from a single trans-Pacific flight and his bank account details. The check cleared. 17. A man in New Jersey, furious after a breakup, bet his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend that he could win her back with a grand romantic gesture. He spent his entire paycheck hiring a barbershop quartet to sing outside her office. She called security. The new boyfriend just sent him a picture of them on a dinner date. 18. A bodybuilder in Venice Beach, California, bet a group of onlookers he could deadlift the back end of a smart car. At stake was nothing but pure ego. He managed to lift it about 2 inches before something in his lower back audibly popped, sending him to the chiropractor for the next 6 months. 19. A renter in Brooklyn, convinced he was a home renovation expert after watching a 30-minute TV show, bet his roommate his entire security deposit he could open up the space by removing a wall. He failed to check if it was load-bearing. It was. The ceiling began to visibly sag within minutes, leading to an emergency evacuation and a bill from his landlord that made the security deposit look like pocket change. 20. A self-proclaimed poker genius bet his friends he could run a successful bluff while holding the worst possible hand, a 7-2 offsuit. The pot was $1,000. An opponent, holding 4 aces, calmly called his all-in bet. The table's silence was more devastating than any heckling could ever be. 21. Convinced that all mechanics were scam artists, a man from Detroit bet his brother he could replace his car's transmission by watching a single YouTube video. He ended up with a garage full of parts, a car that wouldn't move, and a towing bill that was triple what the initial repair would have cost. 22. A guy in Colorado bet his buddies he could ski down a black diamond slope backwards while wearing a blindfold. The prize? A case of beer. He didn't just crash. He caused a human avalanche, taking out 5 other skiers and earning a lifetime ban from the resort. The beer was not worth it. 23. A fan of the musical Hamilton, so utterly convinced of its historical accuracy, got into a shouting match with a history major. He arrogantly bet his prized signed copy of the Chernow biography against the student's entire textbook fund that Hamilton was a U.S. president. The history major simply pulled out his phone, showed him the official list of presidents, and walked away with the very book that inspired the man's foolish confidence. 24. A man was so certain his unbeatable fantasy football team would win the league championship, he bet his coworker he would get a tattoo of the coworker's face on his arm if he lost. He lost by a single point. Now he has to explain to everyone why a picture of Dave from accounting is permanently etched into his bicep. 25. A woman in Seattle bet her husband she could quit caffeine cold turkey for a month. The prize was a weekend getaway. By day 3, her withdrawal headaches were so apocalyptic and her mood so foul that she paid him $500 just to let her out of the bet and go buy a latte. 26. 2 roommates in Austin made a bet to see who could build the superior squirrel-proof bird feeder. One guy spent weeks designing an elaborate, laser-guided, motion-activated water cannon. The other guy just greased the pole with Crisco. Crisco Man won, and Laser Man had to pay for a month of their electricity bill. 27. A man in Las Vegas bet a street performer $100 that he could escape from a pair of regulation handcuffs. After 20 minutes of struggling, sweating, and drawing a massive crowd, he gave up. The performer unlocked him with a key he'd had in his pocket the whole time. 28. A supremely confident chef bet a food critic he could make a gourmet meal out of nothing but gas station ingredients. He presented a dish of Slim Jim-infused ramen with a Cheetos reduction sauce. The critic simply wrote, "This is a culinary crime scene," on a napkin and walked away without paying. 29. A dude bet his friend he could jump from his apartment balcony into the complex's swimming pool. He dramatically misjudged the distance, completely missing the water and landing in a very thorny, very unforgiving rosebush that the landlord had just planted. His ego and his backside were equally punctured. 30. A man in Maine, convinced global warming was a hoax, bet his neighbor a cord of firewood that they wouldn't see a single flake of snow before Christmas. A freak blizzard dropped 3 feet of snow on their town a week before Thanksgiving. The neighbor just sat by his warm fireplace and watched the guy chop wood. 31. The wager was profoundly stupid. Build a fully functional motorcycle using only parts bought from a home improvement store. At stake was the ultimate prize. The loser had to shave their head and eyebrows. The resulting machine, powered by a lawnmower engine, bucked once and then disintegrated, sending the builder home hairless and humiliated. 32. To settle a bitter office rivalry, 2 salesmen bet their year-end bonuses on who could survive a weekend in the woods with only a multi-tool and a roll of duct tape. One came back on Sunday, covered in mosquito bites but victorious. The other tapped out after 6 hours, having accidentally duct taped his hand to a tree. 33. It seemed like a simple enough bet. Cross a small lake on an inflatable pool flamingo. The prize was a brand new gaming console. He didn't account for the local goose population, who saw the giant pink bird as a territorial threat, attacking and popping his vessel, leaving him treading water in shame. 34. A man put his prized mint-condition collection of 1980s Transformers on the line to prove a point. The bet? That he, a grown man, could beat his 12-year-old niece in a dance-off competition on her video game console. He lost so badly that his niece asked if his legs were broken. 35. The fire department's official report cited the cause of the blaze as competitive stupidity. 2 neighbors bet to see who could create the most powerful potato cannon. One of them, a true innovator, decided to use hairspray as a propellant. The resulting explosion not only lost him the bet, but also his garage door. 36. Convinced he was the ultimate smooth talker, a guy bet his roommate $500 he could get a date using only quotes from the Star Wars prequel trilogy. After telling a woman at a bar, "I don't like sand," she just stared at him and asked her friends if they should call an Uber. 37. The challenge was to eat the spiciest pho at a local Vietnamese restaurant without drinking any water. The stake was simple. The loser pays the entire group's dinner bill. The champion wannabe started sweating so profusely he short-circuited his own phone on the table before collapsing in a heap of chili-induced agony. 38. Insisting his internal compass was infallible. A hiker in Utah bet his friends he could lead them on a 10-mile trail using only the position of the sun. They were found 6 hours later, 3 miles in the wrong direction, by a park ranger who was, ironically, using GPS. 39. A woman was so sure her cat was a genius, she bet her brother she could teach it to fetch a beer from the fridge. After a week of intense training, the cat did finally open the fridge door, but only to knock over a carton of eggs and fall asleep on a bag of lettuce. The bet was a wash. 40. 2 friends argued over who could assemble a 5,000-piece, solid white jigsaw puzzle faster. The loser had to adopt the other's political views on social media for a month. One guy gave up after 3 days of soul-crushing boredom. The other now has to defend opinions he despises to his confused family. 41. His pride on the line, a man in Chicago bet he could weather a winter storm on his apartment balcony for 24 hours. Armed with a sleeping bag and a flask, he lasted until the pizza delivery guy arrived for his roommates. The shame of asking for a slice through a frozen window was worse than the cold. 42. A wager born from pure Hollywood delusion. A guy bet his friends he could slide across the hood of his friend's freshly waxed Camaro, just like in the movies. Instead of a smooth slide, he stuck, squeaked, and then tumbled ungracefully onto the asphalt, leaving a massive dent and a long scratch from his belt buckle. 43. Believing he'd found a loophole, a man bet his wife he could paint their entire living room in under an hour. His secret weapon was an industrial paint sprayer. He won the bet, but he also painted the couch, the TV, the dog, and a priceless family portrait his mother-in-law had just given them. 44. The bet was to see who could get the most likes on a single social media post. The loser had to do the winner's laundry for a year. One guy faked a marriage proposal. He got thousands of likes, but then had to spend weeks explaining to his very real, very angry girlfriend that it was all for a bet. 45. A man swore he could get from one end of a crowded shopping mall to the other faster by walking on his hands than his friend could by walking normally. He made it about 20 feet before his arms gave out, collapsing face first into a Cinnabon display. 46. This bet cost a man his car. He was so certain a local sports team would lose, he wagered his vehicle against his buddy's season tickets. The team pulled off a miracle last-second victory, and he had to watch his friend drive away in his car to go celebrate at the stadium. 47. A tech bro bet his Luddite father he couldn't go a full week without using any device with a screen. The father agreed. The son, however, forgot that his own smart home was entirely controlled by an app on his phone, effectively locking himself out of his own apartment on day 1. 48. The stakes were astronomical for such a dumb bet. Loser has to get a full back tattoo chosen by the winner. The challenge? To eat a 72-ounce steak dinner faster than his friend. He not only lost, but also developed a condition his doctor lovingly called acute meat sweats. He now has a giant tattoo of Jar Jar Binks. 49. Convinced he was a master of disguise, a man bet he could sneak into a movie theater and watch an entire film without a ticket. He was caught within minutes, not by an usher, but by his own mother, who happened to be watching the same movie and recognized his ridiculous fake mustache. 50. The bet was that he could jump a small creek on a child's bicycle. He got a running start, pedaled furiously, and achieved about 2 feet of air before the bike's frame snapped in half mid-flight, sending him directly into the muddiest part of the creek. His only prize was a mouthful of dirty water. 51. Kyle from Phoenix, a self-taught engineer, wagered the title to his truck that his homemade go-kart, built from a shopping cart and a chainsaw engine, could beat his friend's riding lawnmower in a race. It couldn't. The contraption spun in a violent circle and crashed directly into his own prized truck. 52. At a backyard barbecue, 2 competitive fathers bet their respective prized, autographed sports jerseys on which of their toddlers could assemble a 10-piece wooden puzzle first. After 10 minutes, both toddlers had completely ignored the puzzles and were collaboratively trying to eat the giraffe-shaped piece. The bet was declared a pathetic draw. 53. Brenda, a wannabe celebrity chef, bet her culinary school rivals that she could create a gourmet 5-course meal using only items she found in a gas station mini-mart. The prize was her brand new KitchenAid mixer. The result was a culinary war crime that gave all 3 judges a mild case of food poisoning. 54. Tim, an overly ambitious junior accountant, bet his office nemesis his coveted corner cubicle that he could get the company's stone-faced CEO to laugh during a quarterly presentation. He told a joke so painfully bad that the CEO stopped the meeting to ask if Tim was feeling all right. 55. An amateur farmer in rural Georgia bet his neighbor he could ride his prize-winning pig, Big Dave, across a 10-acre field. The stakes were a month's worth of free eggs. Big Dave tolerated his rider for about 15 feet before bucking him into a mud puddle and trotting off to freedom. 56. Convinced that a Ouija board was a direct line to the spirit world, a woman named Sharon bet her skeptical husband $1,000 that it could predict the next day's winning lottery numbers. The spirits provided 6 numbers, none of which matched. Her husband kindly suggested she ask the board where to get the money to pay him back. 57. 2 roommates in Portland waged a passive-aggressive war over a single parking spot. The bet was this: whoever could maintain a plank position the longest won the spot for a year. After 12 agonizing minutes, one of them collapsed, only to watch the winner immediately get his car towed for expired registration. 58. Gary from Idaho, insisting that real men don't need instructions, bet his wife he could build a 2-story treehouse for his kids in a single weekend. If he failed, he had to sell his beloved motorcycle. The resulting structure was so crooked and unstable, it collapsed under the weight of a single squirrel. 59. A college sophomore named Chad bet his fraternity brothers he could get a perfect score on his final exam by cramming the night before, fueled only by energy drinks and pizza. He walked into the exam hall, realized he'd studied for the wrong class, and quietly filled in C for every answer. 60. A conspiracy theorist was so certain the moon landing was fake, he bet a retired NASA engineer his entire collection of vintage comic books that he could prove it. The engineer simply asked him to explain, with physics, how the reflectors left on the moon by Apollo astronauts are still bouncing back lasers from Earth. Silence. 61. During a blizzard, a mailman in Minnesota bet his rookie partner that he could finish his route wearing only his standard-issue shorts and a t-shirt. He made it 3 blocks before succumbing to a level of cold he described as spirit-breaking, returning to the post office defeated and dangerously blue. 62. Insisting he had the voice of an angel, a karaoke enthusiast named Miguel bet the bar owner he could sing Journey's Don't Stop Believin' so perfectly that he'd get a standing ovation. He hit a note so screechingly off-key that the sound system shorted out, plunging the entire bar into silence. 63. A woman bet her tech-obsessed husband that she could navigate their family vacation through 3 states using only paper maps. She confidently led them 80 miles in the wrong direction, ending up in a town called Nowhere, which, according to the map, didn't even exist. 64. A Texan man, insufferably proud of his 5-alarm chili recipe, bet his rival at the annual cook-off that the loser would have to display the winner's trophy in their home for a year. To guarantee a win, he added 3 whole ghost peppers. His chili was so violently spicy that the judges couldn't get past 1 bite, disqualifying him immediately. A sweet grandmother named Carol won with a mild, bean-free recipe. 65. 2 fishermen off the coast of Florida made a wager on who could catch the biggest fish. The loser had to gut and clean the entire day's catch. One man hooked a massive grouper, but celebrated so hard he tripped and fell overboard, forcing the winner to haul him, not the fish, back into the boat. 66. A minimalist artist bet a gallery owner that he could sell a canvas that was completely blank. He titled it Void and priced it at $10,000. Not only did it not sell, but a janitor, thinking it was a spare canvas, used it to wipe up a coffee spill, thus creating a piece that was arguably more interesting. 67. Stan, a retired gym teacher, bet his son-in-law he could still climb the rope in his old high school gymnasium. He got halfway up before his arms gave out completely, leaving him dangling helplessly for 10 minutes until the janitor had to come get a ladder. 68. A group of friends made a bet to see who could go the longest without checking their phone. The prize was $100 from each participant. The last man standing declared victory, only to realize he had missed 17 calls from his wife telling him their basement was flooding. 69. A wannabe influencer bet her followers she could live stream herself for 48 hours straight without falling asleep. She made it 37 hours before passing out mid-sentence, slumping forward, and drooling directly onto her laptop's keyboard, ending the stream and her credibility. 70. A man named Greg was so proud of his new, supposedly indestructible phone case, he bet his friend $200 it could survive a drop from a second-story window. The case survived without a scratch. The phone inside, however, popped out on impact and shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. 71. Frank, an eco-warrior with more passion than engineering skills, bet his neighborhood association he could build a seaworthy vessel from plastic bottles and sail it across the local lake. The loser had to clean highway litter for a month. His boat, the Recycler, capsized in 3 feet of water, 10 feet from the shore. 72. 2 baristas, Chloe and Ben, waged war over the title of Latte Art Champion. The bet? Loser works a double shift on New Year's Eve. Ben attempted a hyper-detailed portrait of a bald eagle. Chloe just poured a perfect, simple heart. Ben's eagle looked more like a melted chicken, and the judge's decision was unanimous. 73. A guy named Leo bet his roommate an entire month's rent he could successfully deliver a beer from his balcony to their friends across the courtyard using a drone. He failed to account for a mild gust of wind, which sent the drone and the beer directly through the apartment manager's closed window. 74. An office intern, Josh, desperate to make a name for himself, bet his coworkers he could beat the elevator from the 10th floor to the lobby by riding a swivel chair down the fire escape stairs. He won the race but shattered the chair and his tailbone, earning him a trip to the hospital and a bill from HR. 75. Sal, a mechanic from New Jersey, bet his foodie brother-in-law a dinner at a Michelin star restaurant that he could cook a better steak on a car engine than his brother-in-law could on a grill. Sal's steak ended up with a distinct taste of motor oil and was garnished with a piece of a fan belt. 76. After watching one too many viral videos, a man from Tennessee bet his friend a vintage guitar that he could domesticate a wild raccoon. He didn't just fail. The raccoon invited its entire family into the man's attic, causing thousands of dollars in damage and forcing him to call a very expensive exterminator. 77. A gamer named Blademaster X bet his entire online stream that he could beat the final boss of a notoriously difficult game using a plastic toy fishing rod as a controller. After 8 hours of humiliating failure and a chorus of laughter from his viewers, he rage quit and deleted his channel. 78. Mac, a veteran delivery driver, bet his rookie partner a month of free lunches that he knew a secret shortcut through the back roads. The shortcut turned out to be an unpaved logging trail that had been washed out by rain, getting their truck stuck in mud for 6 hours and delaying every single delivery. 79. Believing he was a master of persuasion, a man named Dennis bet his friends he could walk into a high-end clothing store and talk them into giving him a free suit. He was politely but firmly escorted out by security after his 10-minute monologue about brand synergy and positive exposure. 80. A librarian, Martha, known for her competitive streak, bet her colleague she could memorize the Dewey Decimal location of 100 random books. The loser had to handle the dreaded summer reading program. She got a respectable 78 right, but the bet was for 100. She was last seen being mobbed by 8-year-olds. 81. Chet from Cleveland, a die-hard DIYer, bet his plumber he could fix a leaky pipe with nothing but waterproof tape. He won the initial battle, but the tape burst under pressure in the middle of the night, flooding his entire basement and turning a $200 problem into a $20,000 disaster. 82. A woman bet her neighbor, the owner of a highly trained border collie, that her smarter pug could navigate a simple agility course first. The collie finished in 30 seconds. The pug, upon seeing the tunnel, refused to move, fell asleep in the grass, and had to be carried off the course. 83. The challenge was to identify 5 different hot sauces while blindfolded. At stake, the loser had to post a cringe-worthy apology video to their high school nemesis. After tasting the Reaper's Kiss, one contestant not only lost the bet, but also his lunch, all over the winner's new shoes. 84. A man at a state fair was so convinced the Test Your Strength Strongman game was rigged, he bet the operator $100 he could ring the bell. He swung the mallet with all his might, missed the target completely, and sent the mallet flying into a nearby cotton candy machine. 85. A proud new truck owner bet his friends he could parallel park his massive dually pickup truck in a tiny spot meant for a compact car. After a 15-minute, 27-point turn, he had not only failed, but had also managed to scrape both cars and knock over a fire hydrant. 86. A Florida man, convinced he was a better predictor than the local news, bet his meteorologist neighbor that the approaching hurricane would miss their town completely. The prize was the neighbor's fancy generator. The next day, he was begging that same neighbor to let him charge his phone. 87. 2 fiercely competitive sisters made a bet to see who could stay silent the longest during a family holiday dinner. The loser had to do all the dishes. The bet ended when one sister's toddler drew on the wall with a permanent marker, causing her to scream so loudly the neighbors checked in. 88. At the beach, a dad bet his son $50 he could build a sandcastle that would withstand the incoming tide. He spent hours constructing a masterpiece with moats and reinforced walls. The tide came in and washed it away in less than a minute, as tides tend to do. 89. A man was so certain he could win the giant stuffed bear at a carnival ring toss game. He bet his girlfriend he'd win it for her in under 10 throws. $100 and 150 throws later, he walked away empty-handed, while she pointed out the sign that said, "Rings do not fit over the bottles." 90. Two swimmers bet to see who could hold their breath the longest at the bottom of a pool. One guy, determined to win, pushed himself so far that he passed out from lack of oxygen and had to be dragged to the surface by the guy who had already lost. 91. A man named Bill bet his entire wine cellar that he could identify a vintage Bordeaux just by its aroma profile. His opponent, a certified sommelier, poured him a glass of $2 gas station Merlot. Bill swirled, sniffed, and confidently declared it a 1982 Chateau Margaux. He lost his collection and his dignity in a single sniff. 92. Two amateur storm chasers, Chip and Dale, bet on who could get the closest photo of a forming tornado. The prize, the loser's expensive camera drone. Chip won by getting a terrifyingly close shot. He also lost, as the tornado immediately sucked his truck keys, wallet, and the winning camera right out of his hands. 93. A woman bet her sister, a professional baker, that she could win a blue ribbon at the county fair with a cake recipe she found on a sketchy blog. The recipe's secret ingredient was a full cup of mayonnaise. The judge's comments ranged from curiously tangy to an insult to both cake and man. 94. A landlord, tired of his tenants' complaints, bet them a month of free rent he could fix the building's ancient, rattling boiler himself. He gave it a percussive maintenance whack with a sledgehammer, which didn't just break the boiler but also severed a main water line, flooding the entire basement. 95. A young man, convinced of his invincibility, bet his friends he could jump from a pier onto the back of a passing inflatable banana boat. He timed his jump perfectly, landed squarely on the banana, and was immediately bucked off into the water as the very surprised family on the boat sped away, screaming. 96. Convinced it was a government conspiracy, a man from Arizona bet his neighbor a top-of-the-line grill that he could hatch a supermarket chicken egg. After 3 weeks of diligent incubation with a heat lamp, he was left with nothing but a very warm, very rotten egg that stunk up his entire house. 97. Two rival street musicians bet on who could earn more money in an hour. One played complex classical violin. The other just played the Baby Shark song on a recorder, over and over. Baby Shark Man won by a landslide, proving that the public will pay for anything, just to make it stop. 98. A guy named Rick bet his wife he could install a new ceiling fan without turning off the circuit breaker, claiming he had steady hands. The installation was a shocking success, sending sparks flying, shorting out half the house, and flinging Rick off the ladder in a spectacular display of electrical failure. 99. A man bet his golf buddies $500 he could hit a golf ball clear across a small lake. He took a mighty swing, but instead of the ball, his brand new driver head went flying into the water with a sad little plop. The ball itself dribbled about 3 feet in front of him. 100. A father bet his teenage son he could become TikTok famous in under a week. After 6 days of cringeworthy dance challenges and failed comedy skits, his most viewed video, with 200 views, was one where he accidentally slipped on an ice cube and fell out of frame. His son went viral by posting that exact clip. 101. And for the grand finale of poor judgment, a man in Las Vegas, after losing his money at the tables, bet a street magician his watch that he could figure out a simple card trick. The magician won, and then, as a final flourish, pulled the man's car keys from behind his ear. And that was 101 masterclasses in bad decisions. Now it's your turn. We don't care about the bet you lost, we want the consequence. What's the most humiliating, soul-crushing thing you were forced to do because of a wager? Expose your moment of legendary failure in the comments. If these 101 disasters made you feel like a genius by comparison, you found your home. Hit subscribe.